Oh, I'm live. Okay. Hey, kids. Hey, YouTube family. Um, Wanted to reach out and do a little teach.
I'm live.
Okay. All right. We got to stop
Okay.
that.
Hey, kids. Hey, you.
Stop that. Go to this. It's Sunday morning in the middle of lockdown. My mind is a little befuddled. But I'm excited to do this teaching on Venus retrograde cycle that we are already in. It has already started. It's April 12th, the day that I'm doing this video, April 12th, 2020. And the cycle started on April 9th. Now, she doesn't turn around and go retrograde until May 12th. But she's in her first act, the retrograde shadow is the period of time where any planet that's gonna go retrograde is covering the territory that, in this case, she will come back to and cover a second time, and then a third time when she wraps up. So Mercury retrogrades do this. All other planets do this as well in their retrograde process, but we don't work with them in this way. Only the personal planets do we work with them in this way, because there's a real opportunity to take advantage of the backward movement, the retrograde portion of the cycle, which is really a valuable moment in consciousness when any personal planet goes retrograde. But it's a baffling and unconscious and unknowable process, retrograde. That's the whole point of a retrograde, is the planet appears to be moving backwards. And so backwards implies inward, the unconscious mind rather than the conscious expression of mind. The past itself, Mercury retrogrades Venus retrogrades tend to bring back exes. So watch out for that during this process. So because any retrograde is an inward, backward, unconscious process, you really want to be paying attention during this portion, the retrograde shadow, where Venus is touching territory that she's going to touch again backward starting in mid-May. So the more preparation we put in, the more valuable that process will be. And then there's a third act when the planet goes direct again, and this will be in June, and through the end of July, Venus will be wrapping up the territory she's hitting now and backwards in late May and early June. So now's the retrograde shadow portion. We want to be paying attention. So what's a Venus retrograde? Well, it's an opportunity to drop into inner spaces, to go into the unconscious places and have a shift, have a change and transformation, have some healing, have some bumping up against lessons, so that we might come out the other side better givers and receivers of love. So when Mercury goes retrograde, we're thinking more clearly or understanding what thought patterns we want to let go of and new thought patterns we want to integrate into our consciousness. That's Mercury retrogrades. And Venus is the same thing, only it's matters of the heart, love and intimacy, and finances. Venus invented money, right? Masculine principle says, I want that, I take it, it's mine. Feminine principle says, wait, stop. You can have anything you desire as long as you're willing to create an exchange, right? Money is therefore a Venus invention. So how we relate to our finances might also shift in this Venus retrograde, and be very clear about something about Venus and money in a retrograde and what she's looking to shift in a retrograde. It's about the fears of financial insecurity. Not financial insecurity itself, because that's kind of like a myth. All our needs get met. They always do. They always have, and they always will. Those circumstances may change, and the quality and structure of the luxury level of your life might shift during the journey. But needs get met, and fear of financial insecurity is definitely something we want to free ourselves up from. So that will also be part of this Venus retrograde. All right, so the sign that Venus is in has some data, information. It's a huge part of how we experience the Venus retrograde is what sign is she in. In the sign of Gemini, what I love about this is that one of the things that helps us become better givers and receivers of love and more grounded in our heart experience is when our hearts and our minds are in congruence, which is something that most human beings have a lot of trouble figuring out how to navigate. We think one thing and feel a different way. We feel a desire for something that we think we don't deserve. You know, we think we deserve something that really we're not ready for. You're like, these are all thought feelings in incongruence. So our consciousness job through life, one sort of trope to describe what we want to create for ourselves is congruence between how we feel and how we think. And Venus in Gemini is better at that than Venus in another sign, especially say water signs, where the emotional quality is so deep and fluid that there isn't an easy access to mentally understanding the processes of the heart. But in Gemini, it's built for that. Venus in Gemini is like, I can talk about the matters of the heart. I can process it. I can express it. I can find language for it. And so there's value in a Venus retrograde process that has just enough mentality in it to help us grok what's happening with our minds, though the experience that we're going through is a heartfelt experience. So I love that Venus is retrograding in this particular sign. And by the way, not for nothing, it's not that long ago that Venus went retrograde in Gemini in almost the exact same degrees as this retrograde just a few years ago in 2012. May and June, same time frame, May and June of 2012, Venus went retrograde in Gemini to almost the, like the degree points now are like 5 to 22 degrees. 5 degrees of Gemini, 22 degrees of Gemini is where Venus will backtrack for it. I think, you know, in 2012, it was like, you know, like 7 degrees and 24. Like it was almost the exact same territory. So you might want to go back to the spring of 2012 and just notice what you can about what you're going through in matters of love. Because you might get some hints about what this period of time will have to offer. So the preparation during this shadow portion has specific dates and specific themes to look for and be aware of, so that when in May, on May 12th, she turns around and starts that part of her journey, you are more prepared. The first one has already occurred. As I said, I'm doing this video on April 12th, 2020, and April 9th and 10th was when Venus started her shadow, meaning she hit 5 degrees of Gemini, which means it's like, hey, this is where I'm coming back to in June. And a sextile with Chiron happened right on, I think it was on the 10th. But anyway, right in the last couple of days. Chiron is healing. Sextile is productive and powerful if you pick up the energy. Like you got to pick it up. You got to pick a sextile up. Like if you just sit on the couch, it'll just pass you by. But if you pick it up and work with it, great productivity is possible. And so Chiron and Venus in a productive sextile was in fact a healing experience. So you can look back to April 9th, 10th, and consider what was stirring in your heart experience that might have felt yummy or healing or loving, or some indication of what might need to be healed or need to be addressed. That's your first sort of clue for the retrograde period. So you want to look back in the last couple of days and say, okay, this is what felt like healing thematic consciousness might be around my love experience. The very next setup is the 15th and 16th of April. That's when Venus will sesca square Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn. Now, Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn, Saturn's not in Capricorn at the moment. He's still hovering there. He moved into Aquarius. He'll retrograde back into Capricorn in a month or two. So that's the energy right now of change, transformation, death, destruction, reckoning, lessons. All of the crazy shit that we're moving through on the planet right now can be thought of as Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn up there over in Capricorn. And the geometry between Venus and that, so between how we feel in our hearts and all of the change and destruction and reckoning that's happening on the planet, the angle is the sesca square, 135-degree angle, really uncomfortable. It's not an angle that can make things happen, but it is an angle that will absolutely tell you if you are out of alignment with your heart. And we're all going to be a little out of alignment with our hearts during this crazy time, because it's a crazy time and we're all trying to figure out how to relate, how to orient, how to keep our hearts open in a world that seems threatening. Operative word there, seems threatening. So around the 15th and 16th, be in consideration with how threatened do you feel? How unthreatened would you like to feel? Like I'm living proof that you can be in a moment like this and not feel threatened, though the world seems to be in insanity. And if this had happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago, I'd have been leading the pack of insanity, right? So it is possible to, in fact, be in the world and not of it. And that is a heart thing. And Venus going retrograde in Gemini is going to help some of us get more into that witness posture. One of the ways you can tell just how much work you have to do on that is around April 15th and 16th, when Venus is going to be sesquisquaring Pluto and Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter, and letting you know just how far out of alignment you are. So that's the mid-April lesson. The third piece of triple transit energy that'll be in Venus's backward motion is the square to Neptune that hits on May 3rd. So as we get into early May, this is where love and heart is in conflict with spirit. Our spiritual connection and our aspirational consciousness is what we attain through Neptune. And Neptune and Venus want the same things. So they're both planets of love. Venus is personal love. Neptune is transpersonal love. Venus is love of your heart and your exchange with other people and bodies, and the love of the divine is Neptune. They want the same things, but in a square, they want them completely differently. Neptune always wants us to turn to our spiritual practice. Neptune always wants us to trust the greater energies that hold us. But in that Neptunian consciousness is where we also find escapism. It's like, oh, it's too much. So let me just, we'll do a little alcohol therapy, a little cannabis therapy in all of this. Nothing wrong with any of that, but understand that if you have a challenge with that, look for May 3rd to bring that up. If you are utilizing your current spiritual practice to broaden your heart experience, I think this square is going to be valuable and helpful, but it is a square. It is a conflict moment. So in those early May days, be in consideration with just how much you feel supported by spiritual practice or still in blind side, can't see where you're going and would rather sit this one out. Right? We don't get to sit this one out. And that early May square between Venus and Neptune will tell you just how much work you might have to do in the retrograde cycle to allow yourself to deepen your attachment from the outside world and life on life's terms, and a willingness to see life as a loving place, even when the outside world feels it's in chaos. And how I know how to do that is through my spiritual practice. So of course, I'm gonna, be the cheerleader for this square from Neptune and Venus, to be about that, to be about how much. So those are the triple transits. That's your prep work. May 12th through June 24th is the backward journey, and then from June 24th to July 27th, there's a wrap up. Right. So again, the better prepared you are from that May